Keep your radio dial right here. You're locked into the hottest news station on the planet. Hot 702.5 in FM sound. Blazing today's hip-hop, R&B, and pop music. Keeping your radio on fire. Bringing you the hottest, realest, riskiest talk shows live 24/7 on hot1025fm.com. Hi. Hey. What's up? All your favorite artists.
Check it out. Say my name. DJ Khaled. This is Mila J.
Bruno Mars. On hot1025fm.com.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Cheryl Underwood, and you're tuned into the hottest news station on the planet, Hot 702.5.
What's up? Laugh Therapy and Hot 702.5 FM. Welcome to another dose. Well, are you guys ready? I'm sorry. For another dose of pure laughter and soul-soothing joy on Laugh Therapy with Jeaux. Super excited about this topic today. We are dedicated to elevating your mood and nurturing your mental well-being one laugh at a time. Today's topic is an exploration of the emotional yet fascinating journey of vulnerability and emotional maturity. From the wonder-filled days of childhood to the complexities of adulthood, get ready to chuckle, ponder, and maybe even shed a tear as we unravel the emotional threads that shape us throughout life. And to help me do it, you all know I've got my co-host with me.
JD, aka Sunshine. How y'all doing?
How y'all doing? We see y'all coming in. I'm super excited about this topic. I feel like it's not something that we talk about enough as adults. I feel like vulnerability is something that almost all adults struggle with because our emotions weren't held as importance to our parents when we were younger. You know, there may have been moments where your mom or, comforted you because she saw you hurt yourself or you fell really hard, but just emotions, anger or disappointment or frustration, those things were kind of viewed as a burden, right, on people. And they kind of just wanted you to get out of that emotion quickly. I was actually speaking to a few comics yesterday, and one of them said something very interesting. She said it's like young parents, when you have your children young, it's almost like they only wanted children to dress them up. They only wanted children almost like we were dolls. They wanted us to be quiet and just kind of sit and be pretty and be clean and be, there to show people that, look, I'm doing well. She's so well behaved. When children are not well behaved, humans are not necessarily well behaved, and we're all trained to be convenient. And it stuck with me when she said it yesterday. I was like, damn, that's real, right? Like that. You just spoke so much truth to my whole spirit. So I was really excited to touch on this topic, knowing that we had this topic today to talk about vulnerability and emotional maturity and just what that journey has looked like for us and what it's felt like. And you guys feel free to share your opinions and your stories in the comments as well. But
I gotta say, get your tissues
Get
ready.
your tissues.
That's why I'm wearing glasses today. So y'all can't see if I get a little teary-eyed. It's going to get real in here.
How are we going to talk about vulnerability and you're going to just blatantly tell them how not vulnerable you finna be?
Hey, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to share my story.
If I get to ugly crying on here, y'all going to see I love it. Y'all going to see every snot, sniffle, and I'm going to cry if it calls for crying. But anyway, like I said, we're super excited to hear you guys' opinions and watch you guys' stories as well. I want to dive into our first question, which is a simple one. How do you define vulnerability, particularly in the context of adulthood, JD?
I would say vulnerability to me is standing in front of whoever you're being vulnerable to, but ass naked, showing your scars, showing where you've healed, and also being able to stand in the mirror and look at yourself and being able to internally see yourself as well and see who you really are, and being able to outwardly express your emotions. It's being vulnerable, I think, is a very difficult thing to do, because as a lot of us are programmed, we think vulnerability is weakness, showing emotion, but it's about emotional intelligence as well. But yeah, just saying, this is who I am, you love me, or you can work with me so I can get better.
She said, believing ain't an option. Love me or work with me, but where you going? I love that. For me, simply put, vulnerability is the killing of ego and pride, because I feel like those are the main things that stand in the way of vulnerability. Your ego telling you that you need to be something or present something to this person instead of trusting them to see you in the place that you are. I think that pride keeps us from telling people the not fun parts about ourselves, or not the clean parts about ourselves, or the parts of us that they should be proud of, but instead sharing with them the parts of us that are a little dirty or a little broken or a little bruised. Being able to kill the pride and the ego and just say, hey, that hurts. It hurts right here, right? Or I do this and I'm not proud of it. It's not something that's going to make you proud. It's not something that's going to make you want to celebrate me. It very much so may cause concern. This is who, who I am or what I've done. I think it requires the killing of pride and ego. You can't say that you're being vulnerable if you're not willing to separate those things from the scenario, in my opinion.
The killing. Now, when you say the killing, does that mean it's gone forever?
In that conversation, yes.
Okay.
So, like, in that vulnerable moment, it is gone. But you can't kill your, yourself. It's a part of who you are. However, being able to trust the person you're speaking to enough to kill it in that moment is what I consider vulnerability.
Okay. So what are some common misconceptions or myths about vulnerability that you've encountered?
Well, I would say the main one is exactly what you just said, that it equates to weakness. And I think that also plays into the conditioning to be convenient. You being emotional, or you needing me to stop what I'm doing right now to care about how you feel, is inconvenient for me. So instead of me saying that it's inconvenient for me, I just make you feel bad about feeling the way that you're feeling, right? Or I get frustrated, even as a parent, if they're really emotional because they haven't had their nap. We as parents have a tendency of becoming snappy as well, because we're like, we tried to give you your nap, like to these kids. And they're emotional in that moment. We get emotional as adults when we don't get our nap. We know we planned for a nap and something came up and we prioritized over that nap, and now we're frustrated and sluggish at the end of the day or after a couple days or whatnot, knowing we needed that nap. Like, they're just tiny humans, but we don't take the time to see that in that moment because their emotions are inconvenient for us. We're still guilty of it, right? Because we've seen it happen with our parents. It's just been a generational thing that continues. So I would say the fact that vulnerability is weakness is one of the biggest misconceptions or myths. I would say that vulnerability and submission go hand in hand is a myth for me. When it comes to like relationships, being vulnerable in your relationship and being submissive in your relationship are not the same thing.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah. But some women who are in heterosexual relationships, I feel, are conditioned to believe such, and that's not true. Those would probably be my top two. What about you? What do you think are some common misconceptions or myths about vulnerability?
I was going to say weakness as well. Mm-hmm. So you kind of stole exactly what I was going to say. I mean,
so you disagree?
The way we're programmed, right, is don't show any emotion. And I think that's one of the myths as well, is that if you're vulnerable, you're an emotional person. And although emotions do come with vulnerability, it doesn't make you over emotional. If that makes sense. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So, oh, she just being emotional. No, I'm being vulnerable, and I'm sharing, and I'm trusting you. My future cousin, Richie, commented and said, trust is a big part of vulnerability, which is true. I have to trust you enough with my emotions, my feelings, my thoughts, my everything, me to be standing there butt ass naked in front of you. In my words, I have to trust you in order to be vulnerable with you. So I would say that would be one of the myths, is that you're overly emotional because you're being vulnerable. I think that leads to what the misconceptions are in vulnerability, is that everyone is so freaking afraid of having emotions and showing emotion, coming from someone who that was me for a very long time. So I totally understand. It's just how we were programmed, because we're gonna get into this later on, but because of time.
Okay. Can you share a personal experience where embracing vulnerability led to positive growth or a meaningful connection?
Ooh, I gotta take a deep breath on this one.
Oh.
So in my recent trip to Jamaica, we had a family trip to Jamaica. So we having a great time, and I'm Jamaican, so all of my family's from Jamaica, and we were going to visit family. It ended up being a funeral we had to go to, which that's not the emotional vulnerability part. After, we went with some cousins, and one of my cousins, who, let's just say, did some harm to me when I was younger, and he had just got out of prison, and he was back in Jamaica. He got deported back to Jamaica. And I did not want to see. And I made it very clear. And I was kind of forced to see him. And my mother was with me. And I felt completely unprotected. And at first, my first initial reaction was like rage and hurt and all of that. But after I sat with it, and I was vulnerable enough, because I've never been vulnerable enough, I don't think, with my mother, to explain my emotions and what I was going through and what I was feeling. But after explaining that to her, we really had a great conversation, and I was able to express everything that I didn't express before. When everything initially happened, because I didn't share emotions and feelings and all of that stuff back then. I just kind of rolled with the punches. But we had a great conversation, and I think it was a great outcome after. And I felt so much better, because you can ask my sister. She's probably listening right now. At first, my first reaction was like, I'm never talking to my mama again. And she's literally sitting in the other room. And I was like, I'll never be able to forgive her. And I ended up forgiving her that night, and it ended up being great. So there's that. What about you?
I feel like I've had...
Like I said, that's why I'm wearing glasses.
I feel like I've had so many with my family in the past few years, but one that comes to mind and stands out the most is a conversation I was having with my mom, and I was on my way to work. And I was actually using this job as a means to just be busy, to busy my mind. I don't know if any of you guys have ever taken a job just so that you had something to do. But that's the space that I was in at that time. I had just gotten out of the military. I was still married. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, I lost my first son. He was not a stillborn. I had him. I loved him with all of my doggone heart. He was my very first son. And I took him to the doctor. And I told them he was breathing funny. And I will never forget that nurse telling me, babies just breathe funny sometimes.
Huh?
That's literally what the fuck she said to me. She said that she understands me being a new mom, that I was worried, but sometimes babies just breathe funny because they're still learning how to breathe outside of the womb. Right? So that makes sense to me as a new mother. However, in my spirit, I felt that that wasn't right because he wasn't my first child. He was simply my first son. Right? But okay, took her word for it, went home, and 2 days later, my son passed away of SIDS. Right. So I ended up entering one of the deepest depressions of my life, and I took this job just so that I wouldn't be at the house by myself. At that time, I felt like I had lost my identity. I had lost who I was. I had my daughter at the time, but it's almost like I was afraid to love her as much as I did because I loved my son as well, you know, with like all of me, and losing him made me lose myself in certain ways. So it's almost like I was afraid to extend that love to my daughter in the sense like abandonment issues, you know, like what if something happens to her too, right? So anyway, I took this job, and I remember riding to this job. It was like an hour away every day, both ways. So it was just an extra 2 hours on the road, and I enjoyed that time to think. But this one day I was just overcome and overwhelmed with such emotion. And I just remember calling my mom, and like, I don't know why I was yelling at her. There was no reason for me to be yelling at my mom, but I was so emotional. And it's not like I was yelling. I was telling her that I was not okay. And that's what I remember. I just remember saying multiple times on the phone, I keep trying to be okay. I just want to be okay, and I'm not okay. People want to be good. People want to be great. People want to be successful. People want to be all of this. In this moment, all I wanted was to be okay. All I wanted was to not cry in the shower, right? All I wanted was to not take that hour that I was driving to work and spend half of it trying to listen to gospel music and uplifting music to keep me from crying again, right? And I don't even know if my mom knows that it was these words that made me, just for that split second, be okay. But this was several months after my son had passed, and I felt like everyone else had moved on, but I had not. But no one had said these particular words to me. Everyone kept asking me what I felt were dumbass questions. How are you feeling today? My baby is dead. How do you think I'm feeling is what I wanted to say, right? I have no idea why, right? What did I do to deserve my child not being with me anymore, right? So that's the emotional space I was in. And my mom finally, while I was driving, she just said, oh, baby. She said, I don't know what to say because I haven't felt what you're feeling. And that's all I needed. I swear to God, that was all I needed. Because I felt like everybody,
at your mama.
Yeah, girl, I was screaming too. I was like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And I was
sometimes
driving,
that's
like,
what you need to do.
And I could hear her fighting tears. I could hear it in her voice, because as a mom, all you want is to, protect your baby.
Child.
All you want is to keep them out of pain and out of harm's way. And there was nothing she could do for me in that moment. And I was in a different state. I was in Tennessee and she was in Texas. So I FaceTimed her and I'm screaming into the phone and I'm crying and I'm telling her I'm not good. I'm not mentally good. I'm not physically good. I'm not emotionally good. I'm not financially good. I'm not good. Right? And she was like, why did you take this job? You don't need, from what I know, you don't need the money coming straight out the military. You guys just got your insurance for the baby not too long ago. Why aren't you at home? Right? Like, I feel like you're stressing yourself, but I needed to keep busy. And, I'm usually trying to be a soldier. I don't want to cry in front of people. I don't want to, I'm always the one that's like, bitch, I'll beat your ass. Like, I'm the quick one to go into that mental first. And in that moment, I didn't even have the strength to fight for myself, right? So hearing my mom say the words, I don't know what to say because I haven't felt what you're feeling. She hasn't lost a child. Right? So I'm calling who's a superhero to me, my shero, my mom, looking for advice. And it was the first time that I saw her as a mom, but not my mom, if that makes sense, just another mom. And I looked at things from her point of view, like how would I feel if my daughter were in this situation and there was nothing I could do to fix it. There's nothing I can do to comfort you in this moment. There's nothing I can do to take it back or fix it for you. And there's nothing I want more than to be able to do that. And it was just a different view of my mom I saw in that moment, because she was hurting, not because something had happened to her, even though he was her grandchild. She met him for 6 days, I had him for the 10 months that I carried him, and then for another 2.5 months after he was here with us on earth. And I felt like I lost my entire life. right? And just that one day, I felt like everything was gone. So I would say that vulnerability and calling her and letting her know, because everyone goes on with their day. They go on with their lives. They've got to work. They got to do this, that, and the other. They think I'm working and I'm living just fine. And I had to call and let them know, hey, I'm not good. I'm not okay. And I got exactly the words that I needed from my mom, even though she couldn't help. Her admitting that she couldn't help somehow was comforting, yeah. Yeah, it was really weird. Can you think of an instance that you handled poorly as a young adult and how you'd handle it differently now?
As far as emotional intelligence? Or?
Yeah, and then what experience would you say that you've had that changed the way that you view that situation, if you can bring us into your world?
I would say it's really funny. My Uncle Gary, who is transitioned now, but I was like one of his kids. And one day we were at Academy. That, I don't know if y'all know what Academy is. It's a sporting goods store. It was where we went on the weekends to just have fun, and pick out a new basketball, or a basketball goal, or jerseys or socks or something, and it would be like a treat for us. I don't know if Bree and Keely's on here, if y'all remember this, but we were at Academy, and this is how I'm gonna date myself here. It was a Michael Jordan jersey. It was one of the special edition ones, where it had the red stripes going down. It was black, but it had the red stripes. And I already had a Jordan jersey, but I wanted that special edition one. And he did spoil me, which I can see that now as an adult. But we're going through the store, and I pick up this jersey, and I'm like, hey, Uncle Gary, can I have this? Can I please have it? And I usually wasn't the annoying one. It was Bree. Y'all can, Bree, if you're on here, you can comment and agree with me. But this day, I was probably being real annoying, and then Bree and Justin, which are younger, they were younger kids, and they were probably annoying the hell out of him too. And he was looking at tennis rackets because he loved tennis. And I was annoying him so bad that day, he bopped me in the head with a tennis racket. And that hurt my soul. That hurt my soul to the core, because he was like my dad. And for him to put his hands on me, not his hands, but for him to bop me like that, it wasn't even a hard bop. But I was just hurt so much. But now and it hurt me so much, I was telling myself I wanted to kill myself.
What?
Yes, I overreacted like a mug. I was like, I annoyed my only father figure so much that he wanted to hit me, or he hit me. And it destroyed my whole soul. It shouldn't have. Looking back at it as an adult now, I should have had the emotion. Well, not should have, because I was still a little kid. But I should have handled it different. Ask once, and if he says no, then move on. I ended up still getting the jersey anyway, y'all. But there's that.
I would say, I don't even remember what the reason was. My parents pissed me off one day, and I decided that I was cutting them off.
Wait, is this when you ran away?
No, this is a different time. I was grown at this time. I was grown and already had kids. I think Legend was born. Yeah, this wasn't that long ago. My son is 7, y'all. I think Legend was born. He was like maybe 1 or 2 at the time. And my parents love my kids. They absolutely adore my children. And they did something. I don't remember what it was, but I remember cutting them off and not talking to them. And we went to the same church. My grandfather is the pastor of said church, right? And me and my mom is like one of my best freaking friends. So I talk to her. When I talk to her, we talk for long periods of time. We talk about whatever we want. Like, it's an open relationship. So cutting her off was like, because she's one of the first people I want to call and tell stuff when big things happen, right? But I was sticking to it because they pissed me off. And I actually think more so it was my stepdad that pissed me off. It's always my stepdad that pisses me off. But what pissed me off with my mom was the fact that she took his side at this time, and I felt he was wrong. He was actually not. I felt he was wrong. And
Daddy DeJuan, I don't agree.
She wasn't even there.
Oh,
you don't
my
even
bad.
know me. See, she don't be on my side, y'all. You need a partner that's on your side. Anyway, he pissed me off. My mom took his side on it, or chose to take no sides. And I was like, okay, cool. You sticking with your husband? Both of y'all cut off. So that's...
And not your husband.
Yeah, you sticking with your husband. And she used to hate that when I was younger because I would never acknowledge him as my dad or anything if
That's
he pissed
your
me
husband.
off. Yes, whenever I was mad, I wouldn't say, Daddy DeJuan said. I'd be like, your husband said. Or I would talk to my grandmother and be like, your son-in-law. My brother's yo daddy, like he wouldn't have a name or any relation to me at all whenever he pissed me off when I was younger. Love you, Dad. Anyway,
Yes, we love Daddy DeJuan.
we do. We absolutely love him. I decided I was cutting them off, and then my grandfather called and was like, hey, we cooking or what? Because we would go to his house every other Sunday, and we would cook as a family, and we would fellowship and eat and whatnot. And I hadn't thought that through when I cut them off. I was like, shit. I still got to see them on Sunday, and I still got to see them when we go to family dinner. But being vulnerable helped in that situation, because what ended up happening is they kind of had to bite the bullet because I was being stubborn and would not swallow my pride and my ego at the time. And they called a family meeting and asked me to come to their house, and they kind of broke the silence. And I was like, all right, like, I'll pull up. I'm hungry anyway.
So you just went for the food?
Yep. So I pulled up for
no.
the food, and we had a conversation, and I think we ended up just agreeing to disagree in that moment so that we could move forward as a family, because I refused to acknowledge the fact that they thought I was wrong. I was not. I was very much so right, and I was not bending. So I think we just agreed to disagree in that moment. I would change being stubborn as I was back then, and actually communicating how my feelings were hurt instead of just harping on your action of what you did, because what I was trying to communicate is my feelings were hurt.
I miss you too, Shaky. Girl, don't make me cry. Okay, so how do you handle situations where vulnerability feels uncomfortable or challenging?
Ooh, I'm starting to push through it. Anyway, because on the other side of the discomfort usually is the solution, or is the reflection that I needed in order to me to kind of remedy one of my triggers. So I've started to kind of just push through the discomfort. My initial reaction is to become very irritated, very defensive, very like shut down. And I'm starting to try and just push through whatever the conversation is and just listen to what the other person is saying. And if I don't agree, then I still don't agree. But just trying to, push through and really feel those emotions that I'm feeling, if they belong to this situation or not. Right? Like, I'm triggered. I feel defensive right now. Why, though? Do I feel defensive because of this situation, or is it triggered because of another situation that's been unresolved? Right? So then I'm kind of toying with how I'm going to respond from there. What about you?
I have just learned to start feeling my feelings, and I will tell anybody that at anywhere in any place. And I held everything in for so long and didn't express any emotion that now I kind of can't stop it. Now, if I feel any emotion, most of the time I'm going to outwardly express it. And if I don't, then pimples start showing up on my face, or I can't sleep, or something like that. But
Yeah,
now,
I would agree with that.
when I feel any emotion, I try to express it right then and there, after evaluating why I feel that way and how did I get to that place, and trying to figure out a way to maybe not feel differently in the future, but to, I guess, think of it differently in the future. so it won't trigger me. Because everyone loves to use the word that triggers me, but you have to figure out why. Being triggered is just scratching the surface. Like, you know that something triggers you. That's scratching the surface. You have to figure out why something is triggering you and handle that so it won't be a trigger. Just because something is a trigger today does not mean it should be a trigger forever. You have to work on yourself. So that is one thing that I am learning about myself, is I have to figure out why something triggers me or why something makes me feel a certain way. Yeah, and move forward like that.
I feel that. How do you feel emotional intelligence and... Oh, nope, I did that wrong. How do you define emotional intelligence, and why do you think it's crucial to our personal and social lives?
Emotional intelligence is basically what I just said, is knowing why you feel the way you feel about something. So if someone says something to trigger me...
I would think that would be self-awareness.
Yeah, but the emotional part is figuring out why it made you have that emotion. So if you say something that triggers me, then the emotional intelligence within me would make me figure out, why did it make me feel that way? Why did it make me have that emotion when you said whatever it was to trigger me? And being able to effectively communicate that emotion to someone else, not just myself, but actually actively being able to communicate it to you as well, is a part of emotional intelligence.
I got you. I see how you can view it that way. For me, that is still self-awareness as far as your own personal emotions. I would define emotional intelligence as being able to understand someone else's emotions. Being able to understand yourself should be rule number one. Having self-awareness should be your first step to life, not losing yourself. Often, because we're trying to please people as children, we're trying to please our parents, we lose who we truly are, and we start acting like who they need us to be. Once again, because we are trained to be convenient. We're not trained to be who we are. So I think, in my opinion, not saying that I disagree with you, your opinion is yours, but I feel that emotional intelligence is being able to understand where someone else is coming from, being able to see multiple points of view in spite of your own emotions, right? So even though I'm angry at what you did to me, I can understand why you did what you did now that we're having this conversation, right? I think that that's emotional intelligence, in my opinion. Because knowing how I feel and being able to explain to you why I'm angry is my own, like I said, my own self-awareness. But the intelligence part comes in when I can also understand things from your point of view and your emotional state. And now we have a solution to why this situation ended the way that it did, or we felt the way that we did about it.
The way I look at it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The way I look at it, though, is if everyone had emotional intelligence coming from within, we wouldn't have so much lashing out or miscommunication from other people. If they were able to actively communicate their emotions to someone else, then I wouldn't have to try to interpret why you felt the way you felt.
But that's what I'm saying. That's still self-awareness. what you're describing.
It's self-awareness is
to me
different to me.
It's still self-awareness to me.
But
because
actively trying to communicate what
but you're
you
still
are
communicating
feeling.
Your feelings, right?
Exactly.
But if you don't understand mine, so if I'm emotionally intelligent, as you're saying, and I understand my emotions and I can communicate my emotions very well,
I wouldn't have to figure it out.
Just because you understand my emotions, or just because you understand what I'm saying, doesn't mean that you have a solution to provide. It doesn't mean that I can understand yours.
But I understand mine too, and I'm actively communicating it with you as well. Then we're all good.
Okay.
Right?
Can you discuss I feel like you're just repeating what I'm saying in a different way.
If everybody understood and everyone had emotional intelligence of themselves and being able to communicate it with everyone, there's no miscommunication, there's no lashing out, there's no trying to interpret
but I feel like
or
that's
figure
exactly
out
what I said,
somebody
because I
else
said
is going through.
self-awareness as far as yourself needs to be your first thing, period.
I think
in life.
self-awareness is a little different.
And then emotional intelligence is being able to understand other people's points of view and their emotions in the same situation that you're in my opinion. But okay, how do you feel that is crucial in our personal and our social lives?
I think if more people had emotional intelligence, we would have less domestic violence and domestic boyfriends killing girlfriends, girlfriends killing boyfriends, family members killing kids. I think we would have a lot less of that, because you would know how to communicate your emotions and know why you're triggered. If you were emotionally intelligent, we would have a lot less of that. I would be able to communicate to you what you did pissed me off versus I just see rage and now I want to kill everybody.
I think we'd have a kinder and gentler society, in my mind, not necessarily when it comes to murders and things like that, because there are people who do not have the ability to be empathetic or love or feel those types of emotions due to their neurological situations. However, I would say more gentle when it comes to being understanding and giving grace to people. Like when we were talking about cancel culture, when people make mistakes, because y'all going in on Carly Russell right now, honey.
Yes.
Y'all going the fuck in on her, right?
And do we know the 100% truth of what happened?
We know she lied. She had to on
did?
some things, but we don't know exactly what happened. Anywho,
So she lied about getting kidnapped?
she lied about the timelines and whatnot. It's looking like she lied completely. Just the whole story was made up, but that hasn't been confirmed yet.
You heard that, Mama?
But they going in on Carly Russell, and I feel like we would give a lot more grace if we all had emotional intelligence and could just think of moments where we needed somebody to be there for us, or not necessarily just in her situation, because her situation sounds like what the fuck. But however, in some situations, I feel like.
Oh, you said yeah, because she was trying to get attention from her ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, so I feel like there would be a lot more grace given to us just as humans and existing with some of the mistakes that we make. I feel like we constantly look for reasons to judge instead of looking for our reflection in each other, and I feel like that's a major part of emotional intelligence.
All right. Can you share a personal experience where emotional maturity played a significant role in navigating a challenging situation?
Well, I would say in adulthood, I have not had to physically put my hands on nobody.
Wait, when did you start being an adult? What year? Give me that first so I can see if you're a liar or not.
What you mean?
What year did you become an adult?
I don't know. It just kind of
Was
happened.
after you bopped that old lady?
It just kind of, first of all, fuck that old lady. See, because why you got to bring up old shit?
I'm just saying, if you became an adult after that, I understand. But if you became an adult before that,
fuck her. I don't care how old you are. You don't get to just up and disrespect people and their kids. Why would you do that? Anyway, you bringing up old shit. I would say emotional maturity has played significant roles in navigating our relationship. And facing some of my fight or flight and abandonment issues that I had in the beginning, and just really being able to break down where I have and where I lack fulfillment, so that I know what it is that we're navigating toward in a relationship, in a romantic relationship. I would say it's played a major role in the way that I build friendships now. I'm definitely trusting my intuition a lot more.
My
Especially
cousin wants to know what happened with the old lady.
Which old lady were you talking about?
The one you bopped. She did something to Legend? It was at a protest on the stage?
Oh, no, she called my baby dumb to his face. She called my son dumb to his face, and I bopped. I technically didn't bop her. I grabbed her. I went to grab her, and it turned into a bop. It was, it was more like a snatch up. Because my mama told me not to hit old people, and she was in the little chair. It was
Wait, you snatched up a lady in a wheelchair?
I didn't say wheelchair. It was a little chair. I don't know what kind of little situation. They had her set up real nice in her little chair with her blanket, but she called my baby dumb. And she said, "You're not too bright, are you?" or something like that to my son. And I just saw like the light in his face because he was trying to help her. He was trying to help her do something, or show her a picture he had drawn or something. And she turned to him and deadass looked him in his face and goes, "You're not too bright, are you? First of all, lady, I will knock you and this chair over. Like, not my motherfucking child." You know, and he is brilliant. He was only like 3, 4.
Brilliant.
Hey, brilliant, okay? My baby is fucking brilliant. You don't get to talk to him that way. And, yeah, so she got bop snatched. It was just real quick. And then the other old ladies, older, they're not older than her. She was the oldest, but elderly, came over and was like, "What happened, Joe? What happened?" Because they know me and they knew me very well. And they just kind of stood between me and her and was like, "Wait."
She was playing defense.
Yeah,
What an old lady.
It was Deborah. You remember Deborah? Playing defense. I was about to knock that lady smooth out that chair. You don't talk to my son like that. So that is a situation where I could have been a little bit more emotionally mature. I responded as a mama bear, and I probably could have just redirected. But just seeing that it registered what she said on his face, seeing that, like the shock and then the kind of sadness, I wanted to change the memory of that moment from, "This lady just called me dumb, am I dumb?" to "My mama had my back," right? To "My mama is going to always make sure that she's there for me," or whatnot. And
I probably would have read the old lady.
yeah, to see him smile and just kind of bop off, I was like, that's right. Switch up that doggone memory, because that lady got me fucked up. So, anyway, that's what happened. She deserved her bop. Can you discuss the intersection between vulnerability and authenticity in adulthood?
I would say, this one ain't on the list, but I would say vulnerability and authenticity are alike, but they do have differences. I would say authenticity is more of sharing experiences, and vulnerability is sharing emotions. So I would probably say it's all about you and your person and who you are, but one I think is more of an outward and one is more of an inward.
Okay.
It's
I'm a little bit more logical and analytical with it. So I would say for me, authenticity means truth, because some people try to play on vulnerability, right? I had someone try and connect with me on losing a child, and turns out she did not lose a child, actually, and she was trying to connect as though she had. That's not authentic. That is vulnerable that she was able to, be empathetic in that moment and cry with me and be there for me. And that's a dope thing to be able to do. But it wasn't authentic to her in order to try and portray as though that experience had happened to her. People who fake miscarriages, or like Rachel Dolezal, who faked an entire freaking race, right? I think
she faked being black.
Exactly. I think her authenticity is to be questioned, but her vulnerability was there. She opened up about how she felt as a child and the things that she went through and why she has the mentality that she has. It speaks to mental health, in my opinion. However, it also shows the difference. She's a perfect example of a difference between vulnerability and authenticity. Her feelings versus her truth, right? So I would say that's the intersection there. You needed to, okay.
All right, can you share a story or an example of when embracing vulnerability led to a breakthrough or transformation in your life?
I've had many here recently. I would probably say I've been through quite a few transformations since we've gotten together, and just embracing different parts of myself. I feel like I don't know how to word this. I feel like you have presented challenges to me that I've had to face head on when it comes to emotions, whereas usually I could just shut my emotions down and maneuver around them. You kind of just kind of stood in the way of my maneuver and was like, so now, what are you feeling? When we got together, and it was a very it was a discomfort in my spirit, but I'm grateful for it now, because I do it on my own. Now I play defense on myself, and I'm like, why are you feeling what you're feeling? What is this feeling? Let's dive deeper into that feeling, right? It doesn't feel good right now, but once we work through this, it's kind of like a tight muscle, right? It doesn't feel good when they first start massaging it, but once they work through it, you're like, oh, there's so much relief here. But a specific story of an example, I'd probably use my aunt as an example. My aunt and I were really close when I was younger, and then things happened that were out of my control, and they were adults. I was a child. I had no say. We ended up separating and not really being as close in my teenage years and young adult years. And I felt abandoned because I didn't know the behind the scenes story. I didn't know there were conversations between adults that were taking place, right? I just know that I felt like I lost one of my best friends. Ooh, bit my tongue. One of my best friends. And I just felt abandoned. So being able to have that vulnerable moment with her as an adult and just say, hey, like, what happened? Like, I trusted you. I loved you. You were my go-to. You were my corner. And then out of nowhere, you were just fucking gone, bro. Like, that hurt me, and it changed the way that I view friendships. I've moved on from friends like that quickly. Family members, I think I can cut almost anybody off because the people that I've loved the most, my dad, my aunt, everybody leaves. Everybody goes somewhere else, and they just expect to be able to come back whenever the hell they want to, right? So being able to have that conversation with her and hear the behind the scenes and hear what her struggles were, and that she struggled with us being separated as well, and her emotional part and her worrying whether or not we were going to be able to get that relationship back, and just seeing it from her point of view, being able to be vulnerable enough in that situation to admit that my feelings were hurt, and her being emotionally intelligent enough to understand it and not be defensive, and for us to just kind of work through that tight muscle has made us way closer today than I could have imagined back then, and I'm grateful for those talks and those conversations, and even the ones that we have now.
Look at that. Ain't that a blessing? My story comes actually from your aunt too. It's funny, it happened the other day. One of the times we were barbecuing at her house, and I forgot how we started talking about Taco Bell. Somehow Taco Bell came up, and I think I said I had a craving for it or something, and she asked me a question about it to go deeper, because it's always deeper, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, when I was younger, my Uncle Gary always took us to Taco Bell. Oh, we was talking about the bean and cheese, the cups they used to have. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got on the conversation. And I was like, yeah, my uncle used to always take us to Taco Bell. We would get the bean and cheese and bean and cheese burritos, and just had a whole conversation about that. And then I went in college, we had a Taco Bell right by the school. And in my first 2 years, I didn't have a car. So when the caf wasn't open or I was just hungry, I would just walk to Taco Bell. So when I got out of college, I didn't go to Taco Bell forever, and I started replaying it, and I was like, damn, I didn't start going to Taco Bell again until last year after my dad died. And it hit me at that moment, like, father figure, gone. Your craving for Taco Bell is connected to father figures, and you're looking for that. I just had to sit there for a second and just digest it and bring it in. Mm-hmm. And I haven't had a craving for Taco Bell since.
Mm-hmm. You have a lot of moments like that when your family starts becoming emotionally intelligent. It's like, I didn't ask you to start triggering mine. Hold on, right? Like, bitch, you said burgers. You said we were coming over here for burgers and not breakthroughs. You said burgers, not breakthroughs.
Yeah, we are literally eating lamb right now. Why are we talking about Taco Bell?
How do you deal with situations where vulnerability is met with skepticism or judgment?
I think a lot of it is about timing. So if you have been holding an emotion in or holding a feeling in, and you haven't given yourself the opportunity to express that emotion or feeling, and then maybe somebody else opens that door from their side and they're expressing it to you, and you're like, oh, since we're here, let me express my emotions as well that I've been wanting to, just haven't found the right time. That can be met with skepticism or judgment, because it just seems like you're trying to trample on theirs as well sometimes, and that can be met with skepticism or judgment. So I think knowing the right time to be able to express your emotions or feelings, it has a great deal to do with it.
How do I deal with my vulnerability being met with skepticism or judgment? I stay authentic to myself, and I state what it is that I feel, why it is that I feel it, because when I'm setting a boundary, I'm setting a boundary for myself, not for other people. So this might be acceptable for you to do, but it's not acceptable for you to do it to me. Right? So if I need to remove myself from a conversation or from a situation, then I'm willing to do that, because I was being true to myself. I told you how I felt. I told you what was and what was not acceptable. You showed that you weren't willing to, have emotional intelligence in that situations, and now it's up to me to determine whether or not I can deal with that, whether or not I'm okay with you continuing to violate that boundary, whether or not I'm okay with you continuing to not acknowledge this aspect or where you're wrong in this. And then I move on from there. Can I accept that or can I not? So do you stick around or do you not? I remove people. That's how I've learned to kind of deal with it. If I'm being vulnerable and I'm telling you something about myself, and I know that I'm being authentic in my vulnerability as well, and you just won't accept it, then that's okay. Maybe you're not the person to come to with that thing, or maybe you're just not the person for me. You're the person to the friend for me, the whatever. We can keep it pushing. It's kind of how I've always just dealt with it. Because the people who do care about you will have concern, right? They'll have some type of something to give feedback instead of just no, right? Or just judgment, or just complete skepticism. If it's within their wheelhouse. And if it's not within their wheelhouse, then you kind of have to determine whether or not the person that you're asking is able to give you what it is that you're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to know when to say bye. Yeah. And we're almost out of time, guys, but I wanted y'all to take a moment to look at our shirts. It says, started in a closet, now we queer. And it is a limited edition shirt, guys. King Me Comedy. I told you guys last week that it would be up and running by August 1st. And good news, it's up and running now. Okay? So it's still being edited. But the shop is up. I know you guys have been asking about this shirt. It is a limited edition because we will be stopping the sale of these shirts. Because in the future, those that were the originals who supported these shirts will be able to get fun prizes and sometimes into some of my shows, my events for free. So you'll be able to get, some goodies because you was an original when you came out to get this shirt. So super excited about that. And then that does wrap up Laugh Therapy for the most part today. We all know that laughter is the best medicine, and with every episode of Laugh Therapy, we aim to harness the power of humor to uplift your spirits and offer insights into the human experience. Today, we dove into the heartwarming moments and the hilarious mishaps that unfold on the path of emotional growth from youth to adult revelations. This is Laugh Therapy, the radio podcast. Excuse me, guys. This is Laugh Therapy, the radio podcast that's here to remind you that laughter is not only the best medicine, but also the key to embracing your most authentic selves. Join us next week, same place and time for your dose of growth and laughter. Visit me on kingmecomedy.com. Find me at King Me Comedy on all social media platforms. Buy your shirts. Pew, 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 pew. So that you guys can get into your prizes. You can also subscribe on kingme.com so that you guys can keep up with all things Jeaux. My Patreon will be coming back on. I'm super excited about all of the projects that you guys will be able to be a part of. So be sure to visit kingmecomedy.com, kingmecomedy.com. I don't know how many times I got to say it, but I'm super excited about it, guys. So thank you for tuning in to Laugh Therapy. Babe, did you have anything you wanted to close out with?
Oh, JD Sunshine out.
JD Sunshine out. King Me Comedy, guys. Thank you guys so much. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We look forward to seeing all of your stories and all of your comments. Let's have a conversation. All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Have a good week.